KK, Srijit, good to see you. KK, I met Srijit yesterday, so I've got to ask you. I hope the family and you are safe and healthy, and you've got your vaccines and all good. Yeah,
Yeah, double dose over.
double dose over. Excellent. What about you, Srijit? All good?
Double dose over.
Excellent. I have this wonderful memory of coming to Prithvi Theatre and, of course, watching you on numerous occasions. But there's one particular occasion, KK. Makarand Deshpande had invited me to see Tagore's Chitra, which is an adaptation of, I think, Chitrangada, the dance ballet. And might add, you were absolutely stupendous. I think there was Sanjana Kapoor, yourself.
Yeah.
One of those rare occasions when one doesn't only look at the beautiful Sanjana Kapoor, but also got to see you in all your glory performing. So I know that one god of Bengal is out of the way. You've done some Tagore. My question to you is, have you done some Ray before?
I haven't done it with Ray before. No, I have not done that. And this was my pleasure, my privilege to do this.
And have you been a fan in the sense that have you actually read those short stories, either when you were a student or later, watched the films, a little bit about your connection with SatyajitRay?
Short stories, no. In fact, most of it is in Bengali, if I'm not mistaken. But the films, yes, of course, the whole list, as everybody would say, right from Patri Panjali onwards, with Nayak being my favorite. And as far as fandom goes, I think you can't. How can you say you're a fan of God, for example? You can't say fan of God. So you just admire him for what he's done for all of us, for posterity. So including his topics, the way he films his stuff, the way he So all that stuff will remain for generations to come, and that's something that's a treasure for all of us.
Yes. Srijit, the logical question would be, when you looked at the original material, this time around, what did you decide to leave out in the screenplay? What were figments of your or the writer's imagination, and what is true to the original text in Behrupia's case?
Yeah. Just before coming to that, I just want to add a little bit of trivia to the previous question. He did come perilously close to playing Feluda, though, because when I was battling for the Hindi rights of Feluda, I was trying to get them. So I always thought of KK as the ideal Feluda. So if I ever get that rights, then again he will be doing another day.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So he is. If you look at the Ray's sketches, I think there's a remarkable resemblance with KK. The sketches of Feluda. So
casting kabhi ho gayi thi. Casting kabhi ho gayi thi.
Coming back to Bahrupi. Now, as far as the story is concerned, the end. The major change is the end, where I continue the dystopia and I do not bring back the protagonist from the darkness. I leave him there to his elements, to his fate, to his nemesis, to his retribution. And also, very importantly, the introduction of the woman character. Again, the original story was written for young adults. Netflix is definitely not for young adults, as we all know. And neither is most of the content on Netflix. So we've decided to introduce that and make it more, how should I put it, more the betrayal, the heartbreak, the disappointments of life, more all round. So not only professional, but personal and emotional as well. So that is another change which happens in the story. Rest, more or less, it's the same.
So you're saying Bidita's character was something that was not in the original text. I mean, it's just something that is, yeah, and that's a very, very important aspect. You know, I loved her character and the part, and especially how it's linked in the end when the Sufi Baba says something very poignant. KK, prosthetics is an art, and you play a makeup person who it's not a spoiler to say, who's proficient in that particular art. Often when you sit for makeup, you must have marveled over this glorious career of yours at the proficiency of makeup dadas. And in the theatre, do you do your own makeup, or have you had people do your makeup in theater? Of course, television and cinema, I'm sure you have your makeup person. So makeup as an art, and how much you've noticed that while your face is being painted, or are you always on lines at that point of time, having a conversation, unwinding? What do you do when you're in makeup?
Point number one is, of course, I've said this earlier also, is that I consider makeup to be a part of my act. I don't do makeup to look like a hero or whatever. I want to look a character, a particular character. So when I want to look like that, I need the makeup. So the makeup man and everybody else is a part of the act. They are professionals in their own right. So like any other professional, you got to respect that. And that's what I do. So when a makeup is being discussed, I mean, this requires a different set of makeup in Behropia, but otherwise also, we try and set the look in a particular way for that particular person that I'm playing. And of course, the part about doing my lines, etc., is always there. But the end result is what I would like to see, because I leave it to the professional to achieve that target. And once it's done, then we tweak here and there and things like that. When it involves prosthetics, then the dynamics are completely different, because you're putting on skin that doesn't breathe. So so that's a different dynamic altogether. Then it's essential for you to adapt that face into your body language, into your tonal values while speaking, etc., etc. That's a different.
But in stage, you do your own makeup, don't you?
Stage also we get help. We get help because sometimes you need to stick the gum properly, otherwise the thing might just come off on stage. So these things they take care of, so that it's firmly put there. And since it's a life thing happening, you'll have to be very careful in terms of what you do.
Srijit, the fact that prosthetics are an important part of this particular story. You can get away with cheating a lot of the looks and things like that, but you do have a professional prosthetics person on. Tell me about him or her and how they contributed to all the making of the models, the figurines, to make for KK's character's transformation.
So we had 3 or 4 different looks in mind, and the challenge was to move as much as possible from Indrashish's facial structure, his bone structure. KK has a very distinct, bone structure, which is why Feluda, again, is one of the key reasons why I was so looking forward to having him as K. Feluda. So this slightly gaunt, longish, well-defined classical cheekbones, and it's chiseled. He's very chiseled. Now, to make that, to blunt that, to bludgeon those features into someone else's, do away with the hair, play with the eyebrows, the nose, so all that went into the conceptualization of these 3 or 4 looks, and then started the trials, which were quite, I would not say smooth at all, because there were lots of permutations and combinations and misadventures and misfires. And after a lot of desperation, finally we would fix on 3 or 4 solid looks where our script purpose was served, essentially, because essentially it's there is a willing suspension of disbelief. Obviously there is, but to make that willing suspension of disbelief as smooth as possible, that is how we kind of went about.
So when he means KK that he did all these trials with the prosthetics, were you the live male model, or was it done? You were, yeah.
Yeah. More often than not, I could not speak because wax used to be flowing, from me, because they've got to do all that stuff, the blue stuff that you put it and things like that. But but we used to still have discussions on the looks and all that stuff through that.
The great Kamal Hassan told me once, I said, what is the most difficult part of being in the movies? And he said prosthetics. And he should know, because he's done so many films with prosthetics, and he meant the patience of sitting on the chair while it's being done. I'm curious to know, I mean, he could be any come from any part of India, Indrashish, but is it Indrashish Saha or Shah? Is it the Bengali Shaha or is it the Shah?
Shaha. It's a Bengali Shaha. It's a Bengali Shah.
Because the end credits had the Gujarati Shah, which is why I was a little confused, or maybe I'm making a mistake.
Okay.
So so it is Indrashish Shah, as in like
They
the
just
Saha
choose the
from
most
Bengal.
famous one.
Yeah.
I must point out that to Netflix. Then I think it's a absolute error on their.
Yeah, or it could be me not reading it properly, but I was just very keen to set the record straight on that one. KK, the fact that Indrashish is what he is also compounded by his backstory. Do you delve a lot into backstory, or do you get just a little bit of a sense of it and move on?
Yeah, I guess it all depends on a subject. If the backstory is not shown to the people, then I delve less. But because what is manifest is more important than the backstory. But if it's shown, then yes, I do go into a backstory a bit, but not to the extent that it will affect my entire performance. And because the tendency is to take it too seriously, when you're performing. The moment that happens, it becomes extremely boring, and it becomes too indulgent as well. So that's the whole thing that you need to sort of be away from. So whenever I'm doing my little bit of research or whatever it is, I make sure that it is just to the point of relevance and not indulgence. So that's why most of my stuff is my discussion with the director, my writer, the text. This is my area of concern. And that's where I concentrate on. I will forget the fact that it's actually a race story when I'm doing it. That helps me because this is Srijit's story. This is how Srijit has given me a story, and I need to perform it to the hilt. I perform that person to the hilt. That's all my aim is as an actor.
On a fun note, which amongst all the looks did you enjoy the most? There's one chap who looks like R.K. Narayan's Common Man, who's lucky enough to have a lovemaking scene. There is another guy who's Rakesh Singh, and then earlier on there's another guy. So what was your favorite look, KK?
My favorite look, I don't know. I went through the arduous task of doing all the three, so might as well like all the three because. But yes, what like R.K. Lakshman character that you're talking about seemed drastically different.
Yeah.
According to me. For a moment, when I thought, is that me or somebody else? Because
correct. I thought it was a body double. I thought maybe it was a body double.
Yeah. So that was drastically different. So in that sense, yes, that's different.
So, would you agree, Srijit? Was that the one you enjoyed the most, or do you think Rakesh was better? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I thought there was
in fact, that look was also very nice, where KK looks exactly like Rajesh Sharma.
Yeah. Correct.
I
thought that was Rajesh Sharma, which is why I didn't bring it up.
That is Rajesh Sharma.
That is Rajesh Sharma. I figured. I thought there was a bit of dark humor in getting the commercial sex worker to have a mask of, is it Kangana or not? So whose idea was that? Pray tell.
No, so the point was that mask was of Vidita, actually. So that was his fetish. He couldn't shake off that memory and that revenge thing, that vengeance from that betrayal thing out of his mind. So which is why that mask fetish was there, and obviously, so it was like as if he was kind of plying his anger, his rage onto Vidita.
Wow. And was that in the original screenplay when you wrote it, or did you just improvise on the spot? As far as that is
concerned? That was actually improvised on the spot.
Wonderful. KK, in terms of Indrashish's of journey and everything that he's going through in this particular story, is there something that you found a little difficult to wrap your head around? Any scene, any portion of Behrupia?
No, I just I don't know. I don't think anything was that difficult. It was just that it was complex, and I loved it. And I love the complexity of characters and trying to de-thread them and put it together. And that's what I enjoyed through the entire process. So it's difficult to point out one area. Um, uh, it might seem difficult the moment you start entering it and getting involved with it. It becomes more and more interesting. And for me, the God complex is something that also is quite intriguing for me, because there are certain aspects of human, there's a human trait amongst people who think that they can do a lot of things once they're in a position of power. So all those elements were very interesting for me to portray, and portray it in this fashion, from a simpleton to a maniac kind of a journey. See, basically all stories, most of the stories fall under the Kallu to Kalia format. Okay, that's what. But the way it's being said and told is what makes the difference. And this was a different kind of storytelling with the same concept there. It's like either a Kalu to Kalya or Kalya to Kallu or Kallu to Kalya, or I call it. So that's how it is. And similarly, you have love stories. There are only about 8 different kind of concepts in this entire universe that you can speak of, and each one falls under one of these categories. But the way a filmmaker interprets that is what makes it more interesting. And for me, that is what was the journey all about.
Did Tipping Point or Netflix or the creator of the show turn around to you, Srijit, and say, I'd like you to do Behrupia and Forget Me Not? Or did you pick these 2 stories to direct? What was the process behind you figuring in these 2 stories?
Absolutely. I am very particular about that. It doesn't matter which producer, which platform, wherever I'm doing. I cannot work if I don't have the choice. I need to choose my stories. I need to choose my actors. And that is exactly how I went about. I was given a choice. And I chose these 2 stories because I think these 2 stories were the most amenable to the transformation, which I told you yesterday. So that these are the 2 stories whose essence, whose core, I thought would be the most impactful when it would go through such a metamorphosis into a darker space. So it absolutely happened like that.
And in that aspect, even the trailer has this common thread running through it where it says that, there is this God complex that KK talked about. That whenever human beings try and think that they're God, muh ke bal girte hain, which again must have been of great interest to you, apart from the transformation aspect.
Yes, absolutely. I think, but the thing is that the 2 other stories, I have not seen them, so I do not exactly know what connects them to 2 of my stories. But in both my protagonists, in Behrupia as well as Forget Me Not, they have this come down from a point of power and arrogance. Now that is something which connects these both stories. That is there.
KK, my last question is to you. I loved the scene between you and Dibyendu Bhattacharya, which is the peer at the dargah. Had fun doing those scenes. They just come out beautifully. The way the lines are flowing. I don't know if Srijit gave you lines, because yesterday he told me that sometimes he just tells his actors, this is the situation. Forget the lines and the dialogues, go for it. So how did that play out? That particular scene where you're facing him on 2 occasions.
No, all the indicative lines were there. All of them were there. And of course, she allows us to improvise a bit. So we did a little bit of pause here, there, and the way it's been said. So, and Devendu is a fine actor. So to do a Jugalbandi becomes very easy. So therein lies the crux of that scene, if you liked it, because that's what happened. Because Srijit was right there, and the way he kept his camera and all that. If you see ultimately the kind of that fisheye kind of feel and all that stuff is adds on to that little eeriness and the little nightmarish quality of that particular scene as well. So there is these are all hidden elements. One might not, a common man might see a visual and not realize it, but these aspects, of keeping that huge hand in the front, and all that stuff works for the scene, and that's where the scene gets enhanced. Because as performers, we will do our best to do whatever is there, but the way it's captured is of paramount importance.
he's so right, Srijit, because two fine actors, their jugalbandi is happening. I love the way Dibyendu goes saying, "What is your name? But what is your name?" and keeping on showing him the pad. And then you've used, I don't know what lens. He said it's a fisheye, where the audience is almost, they are intruding into the scene in a very uncomfortable kind of way. And actually they are standing around the peer and him. So is that a fisheye lens you've used?
No, it was a 16 lens.
16.
It was a wide lens, but it was I played with the distance with the character, I think, which is why I could have that. I wanted that distortion because that adds, as KK rightly pointed, a nightmarish eeriness to the entire proceedings. So that effect I wanted, and obviously to watch these two fine actors play off each other, it was a delight. And that is, I was just sitting at the monitor and with a tub of popcorn, and I almost forgot to say cut.
Lovely. And that's how the audience is going to feel watching it, wanting the scene to go on and on. You're such masters of your craft. Thank you for the joy you give us, KK Menon and Srijit, and see you soon. Stay safe and healthy, and thank you for the interview. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Hrishikay. Thank you.
Bye.
94.3
One world, your station.
Radio